Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. This was the name given to a boy born in 12 AD, a time of great historical significance. He would later be known to history as Caligula, a name that would become infamous. His family was deeply embedded in Roman power and politics. His father was Germanicus, a beloved general and nephew of the Emperor Tiberius, known for his military prowess. Caligula's mother was Agrippina the Elder, a woman known for her strength, influence, and determination. Young Gaius spent his early years amidst the grandeur and intrigue of the Roman court, surrounded by power. His family's status offered him a privileged upbringing, filled with luxury and education. Yet it was also a life touched by tragedy and loss. His father, Germanicus, died under suspicious circumstances in 19 AD, casting a shadow over the family. Many believed Tiberius, Caligula's great-uncle, was responsible for Germanicus's untimely death. Following Germanicus's death, Agrippina the Elder became a vocal critic of Tiberius, challenging his authority. She fought to protect her children and their claim to power. This defiance proved dangerous and risky. Tiberius exiled Agrippina and her sons Nero and Drusus on fabricated charges, sealing their fate. All three died in exile, likely victims of starvation or poison, a tragic end to their defiance. Caligula, still a young boy, was spared this fate, but his life was forever changed. He went to live with his great-grandmother Livia Drusilla, the formidable wife of the Emperor Augustus. After Livia's death, he joined Tiberius on the island of Capri, a place of seclusion. This was a period of isolation and uncertainty for the young Caligula, shaping his future. He lived under the watchful eye of the aging and increasingly paranoid Emperor Tiberius. The year 37 AD marked a turning point in Roman history. It was a time of great transition and uncertainty, as the Roman Empire stood on the brink of significant change. The Emperor Tiberius, after a long and often brutal reign, was dead. His rule had been characterized by fear and repression, leaving the Roman populace weary and longing for a new beginning. His death paved the way for Caligula's ascension to the throne. The young heir was seen as a beacon of hope, a fresh start for the empire. At the age of 24, Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus became the third Roman emperor. His youth and charisma captivated the people, who eagerly anticipated his reign. He took the name Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, a title that linked him to the revered Julius Caesar and Augustus, promising continuity and stability. He is better known by his nickname Caligula, meaning little boots. This nickname, given to him by the soldiers of his father's army, endeared him to the military and the common people alike. Caligula's rise to power was met with initial rejoicing. The Roman citizens celebrated with grand festivals and public gatherings, hopeful for a prosperous future. The Roman people held fond memories of his father, Germanicus, a beloved general who had been seen as a hero. They believed Caligula would follow in his father's footsteps. They hoped Caligula would usher in a new era of prosperity and stability. The early signs of his reign seemed to support these hopes. The early months of his reign seemed to confirm these hopes. Caligula took steps to win the favor of the Senate and the people, making popular decisions that were well received. Caligula recalled exiles, abolished unpopular taxes, and organized lavish games and spectacles. These actions endeared him to the public and created an atmosphere of optimism. However, beneath this veneer of goodwill, a darker side to Caligula was emerging. Whispers of his erratic behavior began to circulate, casting a shadow over his initial popularity. Rumors spread of his erratic behavior and cruelty. Some whispered of madness, suggesting that the young emperor was not the savior they had hoped for. It is difficult to separate fact from fiction in accounts of Caligula's reign. Ancient historians often had their own biases and agendas, making it challenging to discern the truth. Many ancient historians writing after his death were hostile to his memory. Their accounts painted a picture of a tyrant driven by paranoia and a lust for power. They painted him as a monster driven by paranoia and a lust for power. These depictions have shaped the modern perception of Caligula, though they may not be entirely accurate. Despite these biased accounts, it is clear that Caligula's reign marked a significant shift in Roman politics. His actions and policies disrupted the established order, leading to a period of instability. He broke with the precedent set by his predecessors, Augustus and Tiberius. Unlike them, Caligula embraced a more autocratic style of rule, centralizing power in his own hands. He embraced a more autocratic style of rule. This shift in governance had far-reaching implications for the Roman Empire, altering the balance of power and the nature of imperial authority. This change would have profound consequences for the future of the Roman Empire. Caligula's reign, though brief, left an indelible mark on Roman history, setting the stage for the tumultuous years that would follow. Caligula's early reign was marked by a fervent desire to consolidate his power and elevate his status to unprecedented heights. From the very beginning, he sought to establish his dominance and make his mark on the Roman Empire. He sought to break free from the constraints of the Principate, the system of government established by Augustus, which had maintained a delicate balance between the emperor and the Senate. Augustus had presented himself as the first among equals, respecting the traditional authority of the Senate and ensuring that the old republican institutions retained some semblance of power. Caligula, in contrast, aimed for a more direct and absolute form of rule. He envisioned a regime where his word was law and his authority was unquestioned. One of the most striking aspects of Caligula's reign was his embrace of divinity. Unlike his predecessors, who were content with posthumous deification, Caligula demanded to be worshipped as a living god. He styled himself as a living god, demanding to be worshipped as such. This was not just a symbolic gesture, it was a clear statement of his perceived superiority and divine right to rule. This was a radical departure from traditional Roman religious practices, which had always maintained a clear distinction between the mortal and the divine. While Roman emperors were often deified after death, claiming divine status while alive was unprecedented and controversial. It challenged the very foundations of Roman religious and political life. Caligula's claims to divinity were not merely symbolic. He took concrete steps to reinforce his divine status. He commissioned colossal statues of himself, dressed as various gods, and placed them in prominent locations throughout the empire. He demanded that temples be dedicated to his worship, further blurring the lines between the emperor and the divine. He even went so far as to have a bridge built across the Bay of Baiae, using ships as pontoons, so that he could ride across the water in imitation of the sea god Neptune. This grandiose project was a testament to his ambition and his desire to be seen as a god among men. This extravagant display of power and piety alienated many within the Roman elite. They saw his actions as a dangerous overreach and a threat to the established order. The Senate, once a powerful body, found itself increasingly sidelined and powerless in the face of Caligula's autocratic rule. Caligula's behavior raised questions about his sanity and his fitness to rule. His erratic actions and grandiose claims led many to believe that he was unfit to lead the empire. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation between the emperor and the traditional power structures of Rome. The tension between Caligula's ambitions and the established norms of Roman governance would ultimately lead to a crisis that would shape the future of the empire. As Caligula's reign progressed, his behavior became increasingly erratic and cruel. Initially, he was welcomed as a breath of fresh air after the reign of Tiberius, but it didn't take long for his true nature to reveal itself. Stories of his excesses and atrocities spread throughout the empire. These tales were not just whispered in the dark corners of Rome, but were documented by historians and writers of the time, painting a grim picture of his rule. He is said to have indulged in lavish banquets, spending fortunes on food and wine. These feasts were not just about indulgence, but also a display of his power and wealth, meant to awe and intimidate those around him. He reportedly ordered the construction of a floating palace on Lake Nemi, complete with marble floors and hot and cold running water. This extravagant project was a testament to his desire to live beyond the means of ordinary mortals, elevating himself to a godlike status. Beyond these displays of extravagance, Caligula gained a reputation for cruelty. His reign was marked by a series of brutal acts that shocked even the hardened citizens of Rome. He is accused of ordering the executions of rivals and perceived enemies, often on flimsy pretexts. These executions were not just about removing threats, but also served as a grim warning to anyone who might oppose him. He is said to have taken pleasure in watching people tortured and killed. The gladiatorial games and public executions became a macabre form of entertainment for him, showcasing his absolute power over life and death. Some accounts even claim that he appointed his favorite horse Incitatus as a senator, providing him with a marble stable and ivory manger. This act was not just a display of eccentricity, but also a way to mock the Roman Senate, showing his disdain for the political institutions of Rome. It is important to note that many of these stories about Caligula's cruelty come from hostile sources. These accounts were often written by his enemies, who had every reason to portray him in the worst possible light. His enemies had a vested interest in portraying him as a monster. This narrative served to justify their own actions against him and to rally support for their cause. However, even allowing for exaggeration, it is clear that his reign was marked by violence and instability. The chaos and fear that permeated his rule left a lasting scar on the Roman psyche. His actions alienated many within the Roman elite, creating a climate of fear and resentment. The once stable political environment of Rome was thrown into disarray, with plots and conspiracies becoming the order of the day. The exact nature and extent of Caligula's madness, if indeed he was mad, remain a subject of debate among historians. Some believe that his actions were the result of a deeply troubled mind, while others see them as calculated moves to consolidate power. Some argue that he suffered from a physical ailment such as epilepsy or hyperthyroidism, which affected his mental state. These conditions could have contributed to his erratic behavior and violent outbursts. Others suggest that he was a product of his upbringing, shaped by the violence and intrigue of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Growing up in such a toxic environment could have warped his sense of morality and justice. Whatever the cause, Caligula's reign serves as a stark reminder of the corrupting influence of absolute power. His story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority and the human capacity for cruelty when given free rein. The end of Caligula's reign came through a conspiracy led by officers of the Praetorian Guard, senators, and courtiers. They had grown weary of his tyranny and feared for their own lives. On January 24th, 41 AD, Caligula was assassinated by a group of conspirators. He was stabbed multiple times in a corridor of his palace, marking a violent end to his chaotic rule. The aftermath of his assassination was immediate and brutal. His wife and daughter were also killed, and the conspirators quickly moved to restore order and install a new emperor. Claudius, Caligula's uncle, was declared the new emperor. His ascension marked the end of Caligula's reign of terror and the beginning of a new chapter in Roman history.